of Srila Prabhupada's Lilamrita. Certainly, few of the Bowery men and others who saw him on his walks knew much about the small, elderly Indian sadhu dressed in saffron and carrying an umbrella and a brown grocery sack. Sometimes Prabhupada would meet one of his new friends on the street. Jan Michael Grant's girlfriend met him on several occasions as he was out walking. Jan, I would see him in the midst of this potpourri of people down there walking down the street. He always had an umbrella and he would always have such a serene look on his face. He would just be taking his afternoon jaunts, walking along, sometimes stepping over the trunks, and I would always get sort of nervous when I would meet him on the sidewalk. He would say, "Are you chanting?" And I would say, "Sometimes." And then he would say, "That's a good girl." Sitting cross-legged, his back to the shelf with an assortment of potted plants, a whitish chadara wrapped in a wide, loose folds across his body. Prabhupada looked grave, almost sorrowful. The picture and an accompanying article appeared in a June issue, The Village Voice. The article read, "The meeting of the mystical West and practical East comes alive in the curious contrast between A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami and his American disciples. The Swami, a cultivated man of 70 with distinguished education, is here for a year to preach his gospel of peace, goodwill, nearness to God, and more practically to raise money for his American church. Like his teaching, the Swami is sensible and direct. His main teaching is that mankind may come closer to God by reciting his holy name. Despite the fact that Swami came to America to seek out the roots of godless materialism, a disease, he said, that has already enveloped India, he is a realistic man. If there is any place on earth with money to build a temple, it is here. The Swami wishes to found in America an international society for Krishna consciousness, which will be open for anyone, including women. The article had been written by Howard Smith. He had first heard of the Swami by a phone call from contact who has told him of an interesting holy man from India living in a loft in the Bowery. Go there anytime, Howard's contact all told him. He is always there. I think you will find it fascinating. I believe he is about to start a major religious movement. Howard Smith. So I went down there and went upstairs into this very funky artist loft. There were carpets all over the place, old and worn out, and a lot of people sitting around in various kinds of hippie garb. Plus, what I think they must have thought was Indian garb. Most of them were sitting alone around the room, facing the wall, like they had nothing to do with each other. They were sitting cross-legged, and each one seemed to be doing something different. Nobody paid any attention to me when I walked in. I saw shoes lined up, and I thought maybe I'm supposed to take off some my shoes, but nobody said anything to me. So I walked around the edge of the carpet, looking for somebody to pay attention to me. I wondered that what was going on, and did not want to interrupt anybody because they all seemed deep into whatever kind of prayers they were doing. In the back of the loft, I noticed a little curtain, an Indian Madras type of curtain, and so I decided I would peer into that area. I looked in. There was Swami Bhakti Vedanta sitting there, cross-legged in saffron garments, with the markings on his forehead and nose, and his hand in the bead bag. Even though he looked like a real thing, he seemed more approachable. And I said, "Hello." And he looked up. I said, "Swami Bhaktivedanta?" And he said, "Yes." I said, "I am Howard Smith." I was expecting to sit down, so I said, "Excuse me, I have to take off my shoes." And he said, "Why do you want to take off your shoes?" I said, "I don't know. I saw all the shoes out there." And he said, "I did not ask you to take your shoes off." I said, "What are all those people out there doing?" And he said, "I don't know. And they don't know what they're doing. I'm trying to teach them, and they seem to be misunderstanding me. They are very confused people." Then we sat and talked, and I liked him a lot right away. I would met a lot of other Swamis, and I did not like them too much. And I don't think it's fair to lump them all together and say those Swamis in India, because he was very, very basic, and that's what I like seem to like about him. He not only made me feel at ease, but he seemed very open and honest. Like he asked my advice on things he was very new in the country. I thought his ideas stood a good chance of taking hold because he seemed so practical. His head did not seem in the clouds. He was not talking mysticism every third word. I guess that is where his soul was at. But that is not where his normal conversational consciousness was at. Then he said several people had told him that voice would be a very good place to be written up, and that basically it would reach the kind of people who already perhaps had a learning or interest in what he was preaching. And I said that I thought he was correct. He asked me if I had read any books or knew anything about Indian culture, and I said no, I did not really. We talked a little, and he explained to me that he had these books in English that he had already translated in India, and he handed those to me and said, if you want more background, you can read these. It was obvious to me that I was not talking to some fellow who had just decided that he had seen God and was going to tell people about it. He seemed to be an educated man, much more than myself. Actually, I liked his humbleness. I just plain like the guy. He explained everything. I wanted to know the significance of what he was wearing, the mark on his forehead, the bead bag, and I liked all his explanation. Everything was very practical. Then he talked about temples all over the world, and he said, well, we have got a long way to go, but I am very patient. Prabhupada had hope for what Wise article had referred to as his American church. There was life in his lectures and kirtans, and at least he was acquiring a small, regular following. But from India, there was no hope. He had continued corresponding with Sumati Murarji, his car brothers, and then the Indian central government, but their replies had not been encouraging. In the faith that Padampat Singhania would agree to his plans for Krishna temple in Manhattan and finance its construction. Prabhupada had petitioned New Delhi to sanction the release of foreign exchange. He had written to the Reserve Bank of India in New Delhi. I want to establish this culture center, and for this, I wish to get some exchange from India. I think there are good prospects all over the world for propagating the culture of how to love God in these days of forgetfulness. A month later, the Indian Bank advised him to resubmit his request through the Indian Embassy in Washington to the Finance Minister of Indian Central Government. Prabhupada had compiled, and another month passed with no word from government. One of his god brothers had written that Swamiji should come back to India and work personally to get the government sanction, but Prabhupada did not want to leave America now. He wrote to Sumati Morarji, I'm trying to avoid the journey to India and again coming back, especially for the reason that I'm holding at the above address classes twice a week and training some American youth in the matter of Sankirtan and devotional service to the Lord. Some of the some of them are taking the lessons very sincerely, and in the future they may be very good Vaishnavas according to the rigid standards. I can stop here. So in summary, we see that Srila Prabhupada uh, uh, gained wider attention through the article in the Village Voice, which has portrayed him as a practical education 70-year-old Swami, teaching that people come closer to God by chanting the holy name. And even you see that journalist Howard Smith described a meeting of Prabhupada is a modest laugh filled with confused but sincere seekers. So while Prabhupada was slowly building a small and but sincere following through the lectures and kirtans, but he's facing the discouragement from India, effort to secure government approval and financial support for temple in Manhattan were repeatedly delayed. Despite advice to return to India pursue the support. Prabhupada chose to remain in America because he's focusing on training some dedicated American youth in devotional service, and also he's hoping for cooperation from God, brother. But we'll see what happens. Prabhupada mentioned many times here, right? He's patiently waiting things to happen. He's not losing his hope, or he's still endeavoring